Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Embrace Fertility podcast / YouTube video. This month, I'm bringing on a fertility expert every week to share their knowledge and just open up the conversation around mindset and fertility and the type of emotional support that should be available to everybody out there who is struggling to conceive. Today, we have Kezia, who is the author of Flipping the Script of Infertility. She's a fertility mindset coach and infertility counsellor. Kezia supports women struggling with the emotional distress and mental anguish of infertility to find calm confidence on their journey to motherhood and beyond. Kezia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. We've kind of been in the same circles and know a lot of the same people, and as it is with the world of Instagram, have been following you for a bit, and when I saw that your new book is out, I was like, right, perfect timing to get you to come onto the podcast. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the wonderful world of fertility support.
Wow, so it's been a long journey. I think as most of us, we probably don't think I'm that different from you or many of us that work in this amazing arena. It's really come from my own experience of going through infertility. So I have a son, he is 8 years old, but when we decided quite naturally to try for baby number 2, quite unnaturally it just didn't happen, and that sent me through all kinds of loops and definitely emotional distress, and gynecologists, lots of treatment that didn't work. Nothing worked, and at the same time as having a toddler and going through fertility treatment, I decided to retrain as a art therapist and counsellor. So I took a lot on at the time, but it was a really good decision because it really allowed me to get an understanding of mental health, but also how that was almost the missing link in my own treatment, that nobody was connecting the dots between infertility, in my experience, between infertility and the mental health impact of going through that. And so when I qualified and when I was in a much better place in my own journey and quite healed and quite acceptance of everything that I had gone through, I decided that actually my best support would be to help other women who are going through exactly the same thing, and to really bring, I use my Instagram page to really bring awareness to the mental health side and the emotional mindset side of infertility, because I think that's just the bit that's not being talked about.
Oh, I totally agree. I feel like you're given the diagnosis of infertility, and it's kind of like at the same time they're giving you this whole other diagnosis of like, here's your package of anxiety and depression and self-doubt alongside whatever physical things you're dealing with, especially if it's unexplained infertility as well, that they can give you no reason why. And yeah, all the stuff that comes with it, I feel exactly the same. I think they kind of, you go off down this route, and your doctors and your specialists are so focused on let's fix your body, and it's like like you said, the mental anguish, that phrase is just so spot on, isn't it? Because the thoughts and the stuff that you're dealing with alongside, because even going, treatment can be very traumatic, and going through the whole process, that, the investigations and things in themselves can be very traumatic. And I think before people are aware that it can be, it doesn't have to be, but it can be traumatic, they kind of think, well, oh, I'm not really coping with this, but I should be. And opening it up to say, like, well, no, open up the conversation. Absolutely amazing.
And it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I too had a diagnosis of unexplained. And when what the brain naturally wants to do is have an explanation, and it wants to know what the reason is, because we're humans and that's the way our brain works. It can't have an empty, it can't just have there's nothing. It can't have an empty field. It has to be able to put it into a box of, okay, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is what we've got to do. And so when it's unexplained, it's like, well, what's the solution? What have we got to do? It almost goes into haywire. And what I found is that, and I think it's quite common, is that actually what the brain then does, goes, well, it must be you. It must be, it must be something that you've done. And it's not true, but it's just looking for an answer, because it needs to be able to identify the problem, because it needs the solution. And and when there's a missing link, it's just like, well, okay. And what I found and the anguish really came from, well, then I must be the problem, and so just beat yourself up. And actually, unexplained doesn't mean that you're the problem. It doesn't mean that your partner's the problem. It means they just don't know. But I think your brain says, no, it must be you then. And that's the anguish. And I think that's the bit that I think is really important to understand, that that's what the brain does, but it's not true. And that's where I think compassion and all those kind of things come in, that you're not told that. You're just going through something thinking, like you said, I should be able to cope with this.
I think that's the thing, is it's that whole, it's another story on top of a story. It's like, I should be coping with this, especially when I found, like, my partner, by the time we went into treatment, my partner was like, oh, thank God we're finally doing treatment, because I've been stalling for so long. So he was like, great, we're doing treatment now, it's hopefully going to work. And whereas I was then like, oh, dealing with all this new stuff that I was putting on top, that was like, well, would it have worked if we carried on trying naturally just one more month? So I was dealing with all this stuff, and he just completely moved on, and he was like, we can't have kids naturally, let's move on, bish bash bosh. And so then I was kind of like, oh God, and he's saying things like, oh, don't think about it so much, why are you putting so much pressure on yourself, what, let's just do let's put it in the hands of the doctors and completely trust them.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, oh, so you're kind of, especially when the people around you, and like some of my friends were like, oh, it's so exciting, you're doing treatment now. And I was like, this is the last thing I want to do on the planet, but I have to. I think people think, oh, isn't it exciting? And yes, amazing that we have things like IVF and IUI and all these different treatments, but that doesn't mean you want to do them. You want to get pregnant naturally and not have to do this stuff. So I think there's a whole thing around of there, is people going, oh, you're really lucky, you're in the UK, you can get treatment on the NHS. Well, yeah, you might be really lucky, but that doesn't mean you have to be completely like, yay, we're doing treatment now.
Yeah, and I think there's a real misinformed culture that we have, is that if you're going through fertility treatment of any kind, that it will just work.
Yeah.
So people kind of have this like, oh, great, oh, you're doing that, oh, okay, well, and they kind of get excited.
You're positive.
So positive is so good. Or I had a lot of people who would say to me, oh, so you're doing IVF? And I was like, no, I'm not doing IVF. That's not everyone does IVF. And not all fertility treatment works. So they put, when I went through the NHS, I wasn't entitled to IVF, quite understandably, because we had a child. But they did put me on Clomid, and I thought it would work, because I trusted the doctors, and because they know what they're doing, right? So I thought it would work, and everyone around me thought it would work. And so when it didn't, I just remember going into a really deep depression, because I was like, well, if it doesn't work, and that's the thing that they're saying should work, what does that make me? Like, like, what's wrong with my body? What's wrong with me? And it really sent me into a bit of a spiral, because I think, like you said, that there's this idea that any kind of treatment, you know, that intervention by the medical community instantly means success. And I think a lot of people who go through fertility treatment realize that's not actually the case. You know, it might not work. And in fact, it might not work the first time. It might not even work the second time. It might eventually work, but, you know, it's a real process that you have to go through. And I think that's the challenge. That's the thing to get your mind around. It just might not work.
I think the thing is that you can pin so much hope on this is the thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's treatment, sometimes that might be like a diet change or
Yeah.
acupuncture, or, you know, the new magical crystal that you rub on your forehead and dance around at me. You know, all these things that and the list of things that I did, Kezia, oh my word. One day
I'm sure if we compared lists, it would be quite similar.
I've never shared the full list because I'm really worried about people going, this is the checklist, this is what Naomi did to get success. I'm like, no, don't do the list.
Don't do the list.
Don't do them.
Don't do them.
Pick like 2 things and just do those if they're making you feel really good.
Yeah.
Rather than I have to, because I got to the stage that the list was, I didn't really have time to go to work, basically. I was still working, but the list of things that all these different books and specialists and webinars and all the rest of it told me, and I was sort of doing them all because that was kind of in a way keeping me together, because it was giving me some sense of control. That I was like, I can control what I eat, I can control what I listen to, I can control, you know, what exercise I take, for example. But then obviously when it didn't work, again, it felt like I haven't done it right.
Yeah.
So again, it was this back on you, love.
Yeah.
You know, did you take the herbs at the right time? Did you do all these different things and tick all the boxes? So talk to me a bit about what changed for you. What was it that made you, so you were already training as an arts therapist. Was that because of what you were going through, or was that sort of happening simultaneously?
No, that was happening simultaneously. I was in a job, you know, just to give it context, I was a new mum, I had a toddler, I was trying for another child and going through fertility treatment. I was in a job that I didn't like, really didn't like. Life just wasn't very good. The only thing that was good was the fact that I had my little family, but I just felt like I couldn't even be happy. Like I just didn't have anything for myself to be happy about. So the decision to retrain was a very difficult one, because it obviously meant time away from my family. But it was an important one for me, because it really did give me a sense of a pursuit of something that I would really enjoy and really love, and which I do enjoy and love. But that, funny enough, even though I was doing that, I was still and this is the mind, and I laugh at myself now, but I was still saying things to myself like, well, I'll be pregnant soon, so I'll finish the training and then I'll have another baby by then, and then I'll think about starting a private practice. So I was kind of doing all these things that we do, you know, like, you know, oh, I can't go on holiday because I might be pregnant by then. It was all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't, even though that I was doing this training simultaneously, it wasn't really helping me in the sense with my fertility, because I was still of the mindset of, you know, but when I get pregnant. And what changed for me was I tried a lot of different things too, Naomi. Lots of diets, lots of different things. But I finally, it was like the last throw of the dice. I told myself, right, this is the last throw of the dice, because I can't keep trying things. And I was still training at the time, but I went and done some reflexology because I thought I needed something. I wanted like massage or reflexology, and so I went to see this reflexologist, and she said to me, I really think you need to go and see an osteo. And I was like, an osteo for fertility? I've never heard anyone talk about doing that. But she was absolutely convinced that I needed to go and see this osteopath. It was very weird. And eventually I said, okay, fine, I'll go and see him. And I wasn't entirely convinced that it was going to help. But anyway, I go and see him, and he, like on all intakes, when you meet someone, they ask you your whole history. So I told him everything about, I think I'd been going through infertility then by about 4 years. And I said to him, I've been doing this, and this. I've tried all these things. I've been to all these things. I've had all these tests. It's unexplained, da da da. And he sat there and he wrote it all down. And he looked at me and he said, oh, when people come to me and they've been through all of these things and they're told that they're healthy, they're told there's not a problem. He said, the only thing I can think is perhaps the problem's in your unconscious. And it was one of those like stab in the gut moments where I thought, what on earth did he just say? I'm going to punch him in the face. What? It was a real, and I left the session and I thought, oh my God, and it just didn't go away. And everyone I met, I said, this guy said that my fertility problem's in my mind. But nobody was really, picking up on it, but it just wouldn't go away. And I decided to keep going back to him. And anyway, I ended up seeing him for about 2 more years. And we did nothing to do with fertility, but it was everything to do with my mind. And he really helped me with my mindset to see that actually I needed to let go of being so hard on myself. I needed to let go of that kind of very punitive voice that I had, and that there were many ways to heal. And he just made me see life very differently, that I could look through this lens of negativity, or I could look through this lens of positivity. And it was completely my choice. And I'd never met anyone who spoke like that before, and who talked in this way before. And it really did change my life. And I think we think that infertility is instantly misery, but what I found was actually I was technically infertile, if that's what you want to call it, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like it was all terrible, or it was just real peace and calm, and like, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And either way, you know what, I'm good. My life is really good. But it took a real long process to get there, in a really long-winded way that I just said.
No, I love that. I think that's what's so powerful about, the fact that we have Instagram and that we have YouTube and we have all these things that I think, like you said, at the time, you didn't know anyone who was talking about this. You had no, that was the first contact you had of someone saying that to you.
Yeah.
And now the joy of having things like podcasts, we can go, we're just sharing this with people. So those of you listening, if this is the first time that you're hearing people talk in this way about your mind, hopefully it's like opening a door and kind of going, there is another way. Because for me, the whole thing I've always been focused on is you don't have to get pregnant in order to get happy.
Yeah.
You don't have to, and you can replace get pregnant with get your promotion, have the dream partner, have the dream house, have the blah, 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 whatever it is that you want. Because we're brought up in a society that tells us you work hard, you pick what you want, and then you work towards it. And if if you're a good girl and you work hard, you get the thing.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, infertility is the first time it's like someone shouting no in your face, and you're like, hang on a minute, I've done all the things. Why am I not getting what I want? Like, because especially when you want it so bad, that
course.
you can't kind of understand why you can't have it. I think that's part of it as well. It's like you're really being denied this thing that should be available to everyone. You know, it's like you just kind of assume, don't you, when you're like, when I was a kid, you just kind of assume, oh, if I want kids, I'll have kids, and then, you know, if I want to get married, I'll get married. And
yeah,
and then when stuff doesn't happen, but the beauty of this is saying that there's, like, understanding your mind. And that's why I love your post, because you're really diving deep into the workings of the mind.
yeah.
And this is so fascinating. So you're not sitting there going, you know, you can be really positive, let's get you feeling really positive.
No.
You're going, these are the things you need to do to remove. So that's what I talk about. It's like not about being positive, it's about understanding where the negativity is coming from.
Yeah.
Remove the negativity and understand the thoughts that are making you feel like shit.
Yeah.
Then you feel better. You don't need to stick this big positivity thing of you know, really believe it's gonna happen.
No.
Really believe it.
No, and I hate all of that, and because I don't think it's realistic. And I always say to my clients that we can't get rid of the negativity, because it's a bit like anything in life. Like, you can't have joy without sadness. We need to know what sadness feels like, so then we know what joy feels like, you know. So, you know, everything's in balance, and I think that's the same with negativity, or you know, I don't like labeling things, but yeah, you know, that kind of, those negative thoughts, like, I don't think we get rid of them. I think we just get better at noticing them, and, you know, get better at kind of nipping it in the bud. Like, because what we tend to do, when we're completely not aware of that negative voice, it just goes on loop. And we end up just, everything's negative, everything, you're bad, you're a failure, you're worthless. And it just goes round and round all day, every day. But once you start paying attention to that voice, you go, wait, hold on. I don't want to be saying those things or thinking those things all day, every day. And it's just getting really good at catching that negativity. You know, I still have to do it now. There are moments things crop up and I go, oh, wait, hold on. Because I don't want to go into the spiral of thinking that, of being in that unconscious negative loop. I want to be able to cut through it and say, actually, that's not what I want to think. I want to think about the things that potentially could happen. I don't want to just think about the bad things that could happen. I want to think about the potentially good things that could happen. Because if I focus on that, then I'm more likely to experience that. Whereas if I keep focusing on the bad things, I'm very likely to experience more of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk more about that, because I think as well that some people think when you start learning about this stuff,
yeah.
And I definitely did this. I was basically sort of sending out this intention that what I really wanted was a way to just press mute on my thoughts, on my brain. If I was like, if I could just switch off the voice in my head, that would be fine.
Lovely.
I thought that's what when I first learned about mindfulness and the mind-body link, I thought that's what it's going to be. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I could literally just sit down, meditate and go, mute, switch off. Obviously didn't quite happen like that. It's more about, like you said, it's that awareness that the thoughts was, I always say, it's like you can't, whenever anyone talks about controlling your thinking, it really irks me, because I think we don't get to pick what thought pops into our head. Because any complete random bollocky thought can just pop in your head at any minute. We don't have control on that, but we do have control on what the next thought is, or what we do with that thought. That's very different to, oh, now I meditate and I'm this beautiful, peaceful person all the time, and I only have thoughts about roses and beautiful things. No, you're gonna think all the same shit, but instead of thinking it all day long for 12 hours, you notice 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, 2 hours in, you go, oh, hang on. Yeah.
And that's the thing, we want to shorten the time limit of the amount of time we spend in that unconscious negative loop of thinking. So when you start it, you might end up thinking, oh, I've been like this for 2 days. And 2 days might seem like a lot of time, but actually when you think of what you were doing before, it was just all the time. So 2 days is great, right? And then we want to get that down to a day. And then you might think, oh, I've been like this for 2 hours, like you said. And then it's like, oh, you just get quicker at noticing it. But then something else comes up and it will be a different, completely subject. So if it's not infertility, it might be money. And then you go through the same process again of just shortening the amount of time we spend in that unconscious kind of not paying attention to the thoughts. Because like you said, we can't control the thoughts that come in. Totally, you know, whatever thought pops in, but it's being more conscious of the thought so that we have a choice. Because when you're unconscious of the thoughts, there's no choice to change it. We're just stuck in this loop of thinking. And what the danger of that is that thoughts create feelings. So if I'm in a loop of thinking about how awful I am because I feel so worthless that I'm not getting pregnant, and I'm thinking that all the time, I attach a feeling to that. And that feeling might be shame or sadness or desperation, frustration, whatever those feelings are. There's thoughts attached to those feelings. And then when I go into those feelings, then I go into certain behaviours. So I might not eat as well as I could be to help my fertility. I might not do the meditations that are going to help me. I might not have the best, you know, I might do them, but I'm doing them because I'm ticking my list off. I'm not doing them to necessarily feel better about myself. And that's what we want to change. So we want, when you start to pay attention to the thought and you make a choice to say, okay, I don't want to think that way anymore. I don't want to think that I'm a failure. I want to think that I'm doing all that I can and I'm doing the best that I can in this situation. And I'm actually a really good person, and I am whatever I am. I'm you know, I deserve love, or whatever it is that I want to think. Then I attach a different feeling to that. I attach a feeling of positivity or happiness or love or whatever it is, compassion, grace for myself. And then my behavior changes. So I start to do things that benefit me and support that way of thinking. So I might eat healthier because I know that that's really going to benefit my body and I'll feel good. Or I might do that meditation. And actually, no, meditation doesn't really work for me, but I am going to do the journaling because I really like to write. Or I'm going to go out for that run because I really enjoy running. Actually, when I go to my doctors, I'm going to start asking questions because actually it's really going to support me to know more and feel more empowered in my treatment. So the behaviours change, and that's what the difference is between being unconscious of that negative loop and then making a change to think differently about ourselves.
And that's the beauty, isn't it? It's like, it's never just about how what you're thinking about, because
No.
it's very much like, I think sometimes as well when people start learning about this, if you kind of, you know, depending on what source you're getting it from, because there are some books out there that are basically going, oh, control your thoughts, and if you completely stay 100% positive all the time, magically all these, you know, your life's just suddenly going to slot into place. So I was very much reading these books, went off down the whole rabbit hole of, so I did this whole new layer of, oh, well, this is definitely my fault. And actually, hang on, it's not my fault, it's my husband's fault because he doesn't really believe it's going to happen. Oh my,
Yeah.
whole new stuff. But actually, when I trained as a cognitive therapist and started learning about how the brain works, and like you've explained it, there is this level of, if you're stuck in this loop, it's not just that you're thinking a certain way, it's influencing how your body physically feels, because emotions are creating our physical sensations.
Yeah.
And the behaviors, you are literally making different choices based on how you physically feel. And if
Yeah.
you feel like absolute shit, you're going to make very, very different choices and decisions than if you're feeling even like a tiny bit hopeful, a
Yeah.
tiny bit like there is something I can do today to make myself feel better. And it
Yeah.
might be this teeny tiny little thing that you do, but you do it every day. And by
Yeah.
doing it every day, you're bringing yourself, you're getting yourself, instead of that like negative spiral that's like going down, you're raising up. So we're not talking here about law of attraction and magically
No.
trying to convince yourself to be positive all day long and then magically get pregnant. That is not what we're talking about. That is like this, you know, tiny top layer of people like talking about all the magical stuff. We're talking about how the brain works.
Yeah.
We're talking about how our thoughts influence our bodies and our behavior. This isn't just about so people listening thinking, oh, you learn this stuff like while you're going through infertility. Once
No.
you understand this, you can't ever understand.
Yeah. You can't ever not
Yeah,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, because for me, it changes the way you approach life.
Yeah,
And it's not to say that we won't ever have challenges in our life. I think infertility is a huge crisis that any woman and couple can go through. But there are other challenges in our life. We're not going to get through infertility and then it's like, right, I'm done. I've done my quota of
I've done my quota of shit. I don't
I've
know.
done my quota of shit. That's it. It's over. There's always going to be more. And what I love about the mindset and understanding the mind is that it doesn't matter what the issue is, because the same thing applies. If I go into that negative loop, if I keep focusing on the things that are going wrong, or the things that are beyond my control, a bit like with the pandemic, if I keep focusing on what's going on in the world, the pandemic, the people that are starving in the world, if I keep focusing on those things, I go into anxiety, I go into stress, I go into all kinds of things, because I'm trying to like control something that I can't control. But when you kind of bring it back down and you say, okay, what can I do? And just focus on what can I do, you don't feel so out of control. And it's a bit like infertility. When I try and focus on infertility and controlling when it happens, how it happens, if it happens before Christmas, because then in 9 months I'll be this, and
Yeah,
and
Christmas
then
forever.
Christmas baby, and then we'll have a summer baby, and it will be here by August, and we can have birthday parties in the summer. If that's all just trying to control what can't be controlled. And so it's just, that's stress, that's anxiety, that's yeah, and it just goes into that loop. And so the brain just naturally goes into this negative loop about it, and we need to just bring it back down and say, well, what can I control? Well, and that's when that we go into different behaviors. We start thinking about, well, I can control what I'm eating and my health, but in a good way, not a diet over there trying to make something happen. I'm going to go and eat things that more vegetables or whatever, because I know it's good for my body. I'm going to go and do certain practices because I know they support me, and they stop me going too much into stress and anxiety. So it is about the mind. And I think for some people, they go, well, I don't know how the mind plays in infertility. And I get it, because I was there. I was like, I don't know how this is going to help. But actually, it gives you a sense of control, but a real sense of control, not a false sense of control. Because I think when you're there with your lists and your books and following that, that's not a real sense of control. It's almost a false one, because it's based on stress, it's based on anxiety. I've got to do all these things because then I'll get pregnant. But when we do the mindset work, it's a real sense of control, because I am controlling what I can control, and that is me. So I can watch out for those thoughts, and I get to choose how I feel. And then I choose behaviours that, support the way I want to feel, which is, not positive, but, that make me feel good, make me feel good about myself. So sorry. That make me feel good about myself, and then it's just a different mindset, but it's definitely about that control. And I think with infertility we feel so much out of control, and mindset work really helps you to feel like a more sense of control, but in a different way. It's more about yourself rather than about what's going on in the world all around you, or in your doctors or the gynecologists, or and all that kind of stuff that are just hectic and chaotic and beyond your control.
I think it's giving you that stability, isn't it? It's like we feel so out of control, and it's a way to kind of let go of needing to control as well. It's like feeling like, so instead of feeling like you're grasping everything, trying to control everything and sort of bend things to your will in a way, you're kind of just going. So I talk about it, it's like if you're grasping onto something, if you're grabbing things, mindfulness and mindset is kind of like you're just opening your palms up. So you're not pushing it away, you're not trying to grab it towards you, whatever it might be, but you're just here kind of allowing and being. Because I think for the majority of my clients, and they say we work with people who are very similar to us. So I'm working with basically like, people who are going through similar to what I did, 8-9 years ago. And they're desperately just kind of hanging on and doing all the things. And they're just like, they can just get pregnant. And they're forcing themselves, and everything's this kind of grasping and like it needs to work and it has to work. And when we start looking at like, well, what does it mean if it doesn't work this month? Like, what does it mean if this? And really start to look at how the thoughts are adding all this tension, all this stress into your body and into your life, whereas actually you could remove so much of that by understanding that it's your thoughts about. So I say it's not infertility that is causing their stress, it's the thoughts you're having about infertility. And for those of you who are listening, and this is the first time that you've heard stuff like this, you might be going, well, of course it's infertility that's making me feel shit. It's really not.
No.
That is the trigger for all the thoughts around what it is. And when you really start diving into this, and this is practice. This isn't something you don't just learn it and then you go, well, that was interesting. You need to learn it, embody it, practice it. And that's why. So tell us about flipping the script, because it's very much a book that you do, isn't it? This isn't something that you passively read and go, great, this is a practice. So just to let everyone know, I have deliberately not read Kezia's book because I am in the final stages of editing my own book. So I'm deliberately not reading anything else at the moment. So I know just the same as everyone else. It's what I've seen on Instagram. So tell us, for people who've never met you before and know nothing about this, nothing about the book, tell us all about it.
Well, it's like you said, it's a practice, and so I take you through my journey, through my story of infertility. The book's divided into 3 sections. The first section is Infertility Sucks, which is all about, the mental health, and really just that kind of spiraling out of control that I kind of went through, and I looked at all different kinds of things. It's quite a heavily researched section, but it just gets you to think about things in a different way. And the second section is about getting to, well, I called it Know Thyself. And that's a real therapy, a deep therapy dive into, you know, who we are, why we are the way we are. Because I think that's important as well, that we don't just, our thoughts haven't just come from anywhere. You know, our conditioning haven't just come from anywhere. The beliefs that we have about ourselves haven't just suddenly popped out of somewhere. They've come from somewhere. And that's part of the mindset work, is to understand, why do I think this way? Why am I so hard on myself? Where did that come from? Where did I learn that? You know, and so it takes you kind of into, you know, who are your parents? What were they like? I talk about my parents and the environment in which I grew up in. And then the final section is the mindset practices. I share 8 mindset practices that I think are really transformative. And the last practice is repetition. And it's probably the most important part of mindset work, and I think it's the bit that people don't talk about, like in your books that you were talking about, Naomi, that people don't talk about. They talk about, oh, just think positive, but they don't talk about how do we reprogram our minds, how do we actually do that. Because I think, like you said, people pick something up and think, well, I've read that book once, why haven't I changed? You know, I've read that, like I did that podcast, I did that meditation, still feel crap. And it's like, because you have to do it over and over again, at least for 30 days, just to see. Because to make a habit, it takes about 30 days, but to break a habit takes 90 days. And if we know anything about our society, we don't have much of an attention span. We don't need to, because we've got so much clamoring for our attention. But it is a really important part, that we're trying to reprogram our brains. So it needs 90 days, you know, to really put in some new practices, but to really break those old ways of thinking, you know, that old, because this is the way we've been thinking since we were little, since we were really young kids. We've taken on others' belief systems, and we've created beliefs about ourselves that we've carried since we were, you know, very little children. And so these things can't just be changed overnight. So it does really need a practice. And the book takes you really through a journey. And as I share my story, I felt it was really important that the reader be able to reflect on their own story. So it's not a passive read, like you said, it's a real interactive, and there are journal prompts and practices that the reader can go through. And really, it's just a real deep dive into yourself, as I take you through a deep dive that I done through my own journey, a real introspection on myself, but also the reader.
I love it. And some of the feedback. So when you launched, was it 3 weeks ago? It's
yeah, 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
And the feedback you've been getting from people already. So just sort of give us a little taster of the kind of things that people have been saying now they're doing the book. I think it's very much doing the book, reading the book.
Yeah, so I've had I mean, one of the first things came back was that it was a really unique book, that a few people commented that I've read a lot of infertility books, but this isn't that. And I was like, no, it's not that. I think people expect infertility to be like, this is my story, this was my success story, and if you do this too, then you'll get pregnant too. And it's not that book. I say very early on that actually, if that's what you're here for, I don't have the tip, I don't have the answer on how to get pregnant quickly. So, you're in the wrong place. But the women that have come back have said, I love that it's not that. I love that this is something much deeper than that, and that it's going to help me to manage my mind and my thoughts. Because I think one feedback I had was that I always thought there was something about the way I was thinking that was not helping me through this journey. And your book is already helping me to see how, because that's the key thing, is like, how do I change my mindset? Because people talk about, oh, just change your mindset.
Yeah.
But they don't say how. But I felt it was really important to share how I did it, because you can do it in lots of ways, and I'm not saying that my way is the right way. I'm just saying that these things worked for me, and they can work for you too. So the feedback has been phenomenal, because it's exactly what I was hoping. It was my intention that I set with writing the book, that this can help you and support you through your journey, to whatever the outcome is. I don't know what the outcome will be for people, but my intention is that the outcome is that you will live a really fulfilling life, no matter whether you become a mum or not, because life is fulfilling if we allow it to be.
And I think that's what's so beautiful, isn't it? That this isn't, there are so many books out there that are literally called, like, get pregnant quick, and
Yeah.
how to, get pregnant in a month. And I think the people that we're speaking with and the people we're working with, for a lot of people, they've already been in this game. They've already been trying for a few years. Maybe they've been through numerous treatments or investigations, and they need something more. They need something more than people going, do this and then ping, you'll magically get pregnant.
Yeah.
And for some people, obviously they do. For some people, obviously they do the thing and ping, they get pregnant.
Yes.
But because, a massive percentage of people every month who are currently going through infertility will get pregnant no matter what they've done, because statistically that is just what happens.
Yeah.
The massive amounts of people do just get pregnant, and then you look back on what's happened and go, oh, it was that magical appointment I had with blah or blah or blah. But of course we can never know that. And what we're talking about is something so much deeper. And I talk about also the fact that learning all of this stuff does really increase your chances of conceiving, for the reasons like we've just talked about, the behaviors you're taking, but also clearing, discovering like unconscious blocks. If you have like a belief in there that it's not safe for you to be a mother for whatever reason, maybe something that's happened in your past or something that you fear may happen in your future, if you have that unconscious belief of something, it's just not safe, that is going to be holding you up and tripping you up every time. So I say it's the example of like, you're not consciously doing things, but like self-sabotaging, like, ovulation's coming, so you have a massive fight with your partner.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, there's no frigging way we're trying this, mate, love. And and afterwards you're like, why on earth? Like, why you have no idea why you've done it. But your unconscious is going, it's not frigging safe to be going there, love. And it's things like this. And when you start understanding this and seeing the patterns of what's happening, and that's what I love about the sound of your book, that you're really diving deep. You're not just saying, this is what I did. You're saying, this is what I did because of this, and now here, you do it.
Yeah.
And you're really saying to people, do it. Because so much as well, I think we're so used to consuming information and content, and you can become a bit addicted, I think, to the next fad and the next thing, the next fertility guru who's saying, I did this and I got pregnant, which is great. And for the majority of people out there who are saying that, obviously really, really believe that the thing they did is the thing. And maybe it was the thing, but this is so much deeper. This is not just, because it's also, because I always say, like with my course, I'm saying to people, don't sign up for my course if you're going to do my course, and then the second you're pregnant, you're going to stop coming to the calls and you're going to stop doing the work. This is, you learn this stuff for life. And like you said, that repetition, you keep doing it, you keep showing up, you keep showing up. Because then once you're pregnant, once you're a mum, or once you have a tough day at work, or
Yeah.
once, one of your parents gets really ill, something else is always going to come.
Yeah.
And if you've learned how to support yourself in the most powerful way through your mindset, I think it's like we need to invent a new word. I think mindset now is kind of being thrown around a lot. And I think people think it's about being a positive mindset, because I think that's the only way we've kind of used the word in language before. It's like, oh, you have a positive mindset or a negative mindset. Whereas actually it's kind of, I don't know, let's make up like a new name that's really like really long and complicated. People kind of go, oh, it is something different, and it's really it's the science behind it. I think that's what fascinates me. I'd read all these like books on the law of attraction, and I'd literally read this book that said, like, in so many words, you don't believe it enough, that's why you're not pregnant. And it just sent me into depression and anxiety, because I was putting all of this on me. I was like, it is my fault that I am not pregnant. And it found it really damaging, because she obviously had hundreds of case studies of the people who had believed enough and now had their miracle babies.
But then that's interesting, isn't it? Because what is belief, and everyone is, and this is why I even talk about words in the book, and words being powerful, because words have connotation, and we all bring our own meaning to words as well. So what is belief to me might be very different for you, might be very different for someone else listening. So when someone says something like, oh, you don't believe enough, well, okay, define belief, and it's just, I think you're right. I think mindset has been thrown around, and I don't think it's very helpful, except it's the science of the mind. The science of who we are, because it's beyond I think our mind is very much who we are, but it's also connected to, we can't be separated from our feelings and our spirit and our actual physical body. But it's almost like the science of who we are, and like you said, that when we're so unaware of who we are, we go into just completely different ways of behaving that aren't supportive of who we want to be, or what we're trying to achieve. So for me, it was the fear. I had a huge fear around getting pregnant again. Like, absolutely huge fear. I'd been through a traumatic birth. I'd really felt like I lost myself and who I was. I didn't like the person who I'd become, and why would I want to do that again? The brain is literally like, we're not doing that.
I still remember that.
It wasn't fun. We're not going to do that. So as much as I was trying to get pregnant again, it wasn't going to happen. Just wasn't going to happen. And nobody was kind of saying that to me. Like, while you're still there in fear about what happened in the past, it's not going to happen for you. And I think that's the other thing, is that we bring a lot of, we don't just come into infertility and infertility treatment on day one. We're bringing a lot of history with us, and that has to be unpicked and unpacked, because it's part of our story and what we're experiencing. So there's lots of, it's so complex, but there's lots to be unpicked, unpacked, and let go of. And do I think belief and the law of attraction, I think those things are helpful, and they can be helpful for people. And like you said, for some people it will really work, and for others it's just another stick to beat themselves up with when it doesn't work, and then it becomes unhelpful. But I just think all of these things are just things that we can take from and say, okay, I'm gonna be mindful of that. I'm gonna be mindful of that, but I'm gonna kind of find my own way with it. And that's kind of what I'm saying with the book. And so I've got these principles, but there's no order. You can go through them how you want. You can practice one of them and forget the rest of them. You know, it's do what works for you. You know, we're so, like you said, there's so many hacks and gurus out there telling us what we should do, but not everything is going to work for us. We have to find the thing that works for us. You know,
It's also,
don't expect the fix or the hack to just work. You know, really, like, is that going to work for me?
and I
You
think
know,
that as well, it's about that timing, isn't it? It's
yeah,
like, because I ended up conceiving naturally twice after 4 rounds of fertility treatment. And so it was, you know, was it that I sort of had to go through the treatment so my body, I don't know, learned how to be pregnant and then had the miscarriage? Or was it just those children were meant to come at that time? So no matter what I did in those 4 years previous, it had in a way had no relevance, because maybe Jasper was just meant to come when he was. So now I've met him and he's my parent. He doesn't do things on anyone else's time scale. He's the slowest person on the planet and so stubborn. And part of me really just feels that, like the call was put out there. It's like, right, okay, so baby Wolfson, come on, you're next. And he'd be like, no. And he'd be like, oh, it's your turn, mate. And he'd be like, no. I just, so there's all this other stuff of like timing.
yeah.
When is stuff supposed to happen? Maybe there's stuff you need to learn beforehand. Maybe there's stuff you want to. I think
But
that's.
isn't that important though as well, Naomi, that we do this work and we do this mindset work? Because often I think our focus is on getting pregnant, and then there's going to be a baby. But what we don't forget is there's going to be a person, there's a
Yes.
human being that's going to come into this world with their own time scale and their own beliefs, their own values, their own way of doing things. Like, there's an actual human being that is out there in the ether somewhere waiting to come through. And we, as the mother, as the parent, and as their guide for life, who we are matters. And I think that's the most important thing about my book. So I do talk about motherhood quite a bit, because I think it's important that we forget that we are not just creating babies, we're creating mothers. And that's an important job. And the more that we get to go, okay, do I want to be in stress and anxiety when I become a mother? Is that the person that I want to be to raise my children? Or do I want to be someone who knows how to deal with the stress and the anxiety?
Exactly.
So that when my children come,
Yeah.
I can model for them that actually shit happens in life, but it's the way we deal with it that matters.
Oh, absolutely love that. And that would definitely, we were talking about pulling out little quotes for Insta Squares. Definitely that. I think there's also this huge divide where people get so kind of sucked into seeing pregnant people and families being a massive trigger, that they kind of forget that is what they want to get to. So a lot of the work I talk about is how the first things we work on is unpicking the jealousy and unpicking the not being able to look at the thing you really want. Because I learned so much from my friends before having Jasper. I learned sort of how to mother by watching my friends with their kids. And if I completely shut them out of my life, because it was so hard being around them, but if I'd done that, it's like I would have missed out on so much of learning how to actually do it when I got there.
Yeah, I think you're right, that we cut ourselves off because we think it's painful, or it is, we've attached to that thought that it's painful, and so therefore the action, the behavior is, I don't want to be around that because it's too painful. And going back to the law of attraction and mindset, I remember coming across a woman many years ago saying, abundance mindset, abundance. And when you see pregnant women, just be so like, there are an abundance of pregnant women. And I remember thinking, oh, God, like, whatever. But eventually I got to see what she was talking about, that actually the more, like you said, the more I cut myself off from that thing that I really want, because I want to be a mother, if I cut myself off from being around my friends, from being around family members who are mothers and who are modeling that for me, the more I cut myself off, the more I'm saying, well, I'm basically saying to the universe, or whatever you want to call it, well, then I don't want that.
Yeah. It's
And
like,
actually, the
no.
more, yeah, no, I don't, that's not what I want. I can't handle that because it's too painful. And the brain goes, well, it's too painful to be a mother. Well, then that's not going to happen
Yeah.
then. And so I kind of got what she was saying. I was like, oh, okay. The more that I can come into a space and a place of thinking, oh, wow, like there's a pregnant woman. It's amazing. And actually, when I do look around, there is a lot of pregnant women. And maybe that is available to me. Maybe that is, that can happen for me. And the more I'm around mothers and babies, I go, oh wow, like, you know, and really sharing the joy of what that is and start to feel the joy of that, then I'm opening myself up for the possibility of that. But if I cut myself off from it, how do I learn what it is to be that?
Oh, love it. So many gems. And I think this is the joy, isn't it? It's like, it's understanding the energy, because I, yeah, talk about like energy and your vibration,
Yeah.
but that really deep level. And it's not about just sticking a positivity plaster on your head and being like, I'm just going to stay positive all day long and really believe that this cycle is the one. It's so much deeper than that. And I love it. So tell us how people can get a copy of your book immediately and start doing this work.
Yeah, so it's on Amazon, Amazon UK, and it's also on Kindle. So if you're not in the UK or Europe, you can get it on a Kindle version. It's available. I'm sure it's, if you're in the UK, any online bookstore you should be able to order it from. I think they'll just have different delivery times. But yeah, that's where you can get it. And if not, you know, message me on Instagram. You can find me at the Infertility Counsellor, and I will I'll let you. You can also buy direct from me. So
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to put all of your contact details in the show notes and under the video on YouTube. So I recommend everybody follow Kezia. Her posts are so powerful and just, you really dive deep, and that is what I love about you, like really getting into the nitty gritty of this, which is fantastic. And there's lots of exciting things coming up over the next few weeks. So yes, definitely follow. And it's all good. Thank you so much for coming on today. Is there anything else you would like to share? Is there like a freebie that you have on your mailing list?
yes. So you can go to my mailing list, and it is a freebie. The freebie is my 5 tips to take control of your mindset and your fertility. And it really just takes you through very briefly, how to take control of your mindset. And that's for free.
Fantastic. So if people aren't completely convinced that they should be buying the book immediately, which I'm sure they are, but if not, you can check out Kezia's writing style, etc., by getting the freebie. Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today. That has been absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Naomi. It's been lovely, really lovely to talk to you.